Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and sitting around the table today, we have our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hi. And
we have our 22-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, everybody.
And today on the Married People Podcast, we're asking a question: how can I give my spouse grace even when I don't want to? And Ted, when I first heard that this was going to be our podcast episode, the first thing that came to mind are those you had one job things. Like, you see it on TV right. every now and then, but if you just type in "you had one job" into Google Images, you get it's just like hours and hours of scrolling. So, you know, if you've got the signs on the door, they're like push and pull, and both of them are on the same door, or enter only and do not enter here on the same door. You have, my favorite one is probably, if you type in you had one job Africa shirt, it's a picture of a shirt with the continent of Africa silhouetted on it with the word huge, like 0.5 or like 500 font. It says Asia underneath the continent of Africa. It is so great.
And you go, how did that happen?
Right.
Like, how did it go through that many people?
Somebody had one job, type Africa, and they typed Asia, or, you know, the misspelled stop sign, and, you know, there's another really great one that someone sent me. Is like a first place medal, but it's got the number 3 as a third place medal, and it says 3ST, so it's threest, and it's really really great.
First place.
Yeah. So it's just like when we're talking about grace, and those are people sometimes it's really hard to have grace for. But obviously, Ted, we're talking about marriage. So how do I transition this, Ted, from, you know, the stop sign that's misspelled to marriage? How does this translate?
Well, you know, we were talking earlier before we started this interview. These are those moments when you see those kind of things. It's really hard for me to have grace for those types of things. You see that, you're going, come on, seriously, you had one job, and did you not have any accountability in your life whatsoever on this? But I think, grace is super important to a marriage. And when we started talking about this topic, Afton, if I'm being honest, I thought, I can't wait to hear what Afton says when we say that our topic is, how can I give my spouse grace even when I don't want to?
And I said, I'm really glad that this isn't a video podcast, because then everyone could see how many times I roll my eyes.
Yeah, because you were even rolling your eyes pre-record.
Yeah, even when you were just like, this is what it's about. I'm like, oh, great.
Because?
Okay, I'm not going to be the person on this podcast that's like, no to grace. Like, obviously, right. Grace is a great thing that we want from other people, but it's not something that is easy to give to other people. And honestly, like, when we started talking about what it was about, I'm like, okay, saying sorry to people or forgiving people. I don't remember the last time I had to do that with Hudson. Like, I always hold out until he apologizes, which I thought was the right way to go, because then I don't look bad.
Right, exactly.
See, I knew that we were going to get some honesty, CJ.
Well, it's just like, but honestly, it's sometimes I think it's just hard to see in the mirror. Like, when we need to apologize and offer grace,
it feels
it's just
weird to apologize to your spouse. It feels like, this sounds so bad, but it feels like because you're so close to your spouse, it almost feels like I have like this mindset where I'm like, I don't need to apologize to him. He knows when.
He knows I'm sorry.
He knows I'm sorry, or he knows, like, okay, that was blown out of proportion, moving on with our lives. And it feels like I'm supposed to say sorry to my spouse?
Yes. It's time for an Afton intervention. Once again. Well, let's back up a little bit. Like, did you guys grow up with the families that apologize? Did you watch mom and dad apologize? Did they apologize to you? Were you made to apologize to them?
I definitely had to apologize to siblings. I don't know if my parents apologized to me very much. I can remember one time when I was like 7 years old where my mom apologized to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, my mom did something wrong? Like, you know, because you feel like your parents do no wrong. And you're like, I'm always wrong and they're always right, but I'm still mad about it. So I feel like I can remember like one specific time where my parents apologized.
Yeah, it's weird. I honestly can't remember my parents apologizing to each other like at all, like in front of me. But it is obviously when you're a kid, your parents make you apologize, and maybe that's part of it too. It's like it almost feels in a weird way almost like childish to like be, go reapproach somebody and be like, I'm sorry for this or that. When it is just like, maybe we have some subconsciously seen, growing up, like, oh, okay, after that conflict, you just walk away and then it's done. You just don't address it anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think the Southern thing, to stereotype, but I think it's true in a lot of cases, is the Southern thing to do is, okay, you've made me mad. Now I'm going to not say anything, or I'm going to let you know by slamming the kitchen cabinets and different things that I'm mad and frustrated. And when I'm over it, I'll start being nice to you again.
Okay. And see, that is something maybe that is okay. Because that's what like, if I get mad, or if I think Hudson's done something wrong, or I've done something wrong, we'll like be mad at each other. But then there'll be a moment where like, we'll just hug. And it's like, okay, we're over this now. And it wasn't like this thing where I had to like sit down and be like, Hudson, I'm sorry for my actions that I had when I was rude to you earlier today. Like, it doesn't have to be this like big formal thing. It's like, hey, you like do something physically, or like you're like, let's go out for coffee, or you do something that's not so like on the nose apology, but like it means something apologetic to your spouse.
Yeah, and I know we like to poke at you, Afton, because you're sassy, but I mean, I totally resonate with that. It's we had a conflict, and now we're just gonna, we're gonna hug it out, and then kind of move on and make dinner and have a great, be like,
sometimes
reset our
words
evening.
make it even more awkward.
So it's an awkward
To
thing.
me.
Like, so often we talk about asking for grace or giving your spouse grace, even when you don't want to. There are some things that our spouses do, and I'm sure that we do as well, that makes it really difficult for there to be grace in our marriage. And grace isn't always easy in a marriage. So to help us think through that, as you guys know, I interviewed Kara Powell, and what she has to say it's so powerful, but it's also so practical. But before we move into the interview, CJ, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about Kara?
Yeah, Kara Powell is the executive director of the Fuller Youth Institute and a faculty member at Fuller Theological Seminary. She was named by Christianity Today, a huge publication, right, as one of the 50 women you should know. Kara is also the author of a number of books, including Sticky Faith, Essential Leadership, and her latest book, Growing Young. So she knows some things, right?
She definitely knows some things, but I think the most impressive part about Kara is how well she lives out what she learns. Like, she learns this stuff and she applies this stuff. So I want you to hear my interview with Kara. Hey, you guys, I'm here with my friend Kara Powell. And Kara, you are a professor and researcher at Fuller Seminary, correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct. And Kara is a friend and somebody that not only cares passionately about families, she cares very passionately about her own family. And that's one of the things when we're on this podcast, we want to make sure we're talking to people who are not only winning at work and for some ministry, but also winning it with their families. So, Kara, I'm so excited that you would spend some time with us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Okay, so a lot of your research is on families.
Yes.
Tell me what you're learning about families, and I won't date our podcast these days.
These days. We'll use the
days.
generic these days.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to being a faculty member at Fuller, I also direct the Fuller Youth Institute. And so we're all about turning research into resources, and especially that relate to the long-term faith of young people. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we became aware of how many high school seniors from great families like your listeners and great churches, like I'm sure your listeners are a part of, drift from God and the church after graduation from high school. Best data shows about 40 to 50% of young people drift. And as a mom and a leader and a follower of Jesus, I'm not satisfied with that. Our team wasn't satisfied with that. And so we studied over 500 youth group graduates during their first 3 years in high school. I used to say through their junior year of high school, but first 3 years and junior year, not always the same thing. So sometimes a different timeline. First 3 years of high school to try to figure out what families and churches could do to build faith that lasts, or what we call sticky faith. So quite a bit of our data over the last number of years has related to what parents can do, how they can better show young people God's grace and love and mission in their homes, so that young people really come to understand how much God God loves them.
Right. Well, while I have you, I'm going to ask that question as a dad has a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, 11-year-old. And tell us a little bit about your family, because I know you're also passionate about that. Because I want to ask you, what are you learning in terms of helping parents help their kids have sticky faith?
Yeah. So Dave and I have been married 19 years, and we have a son who turns 17 tomorrow, and a daughter who turns 15 in a month, and then we have an 11-year-old. So we have 2 high school students and 1 middle schooler at our house.
That's amazing. We both,
Yeah, we're real close in age with our kids.
Yeah. These are some fun years, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Fun, busy, confusing. Dave and I just feel like about every other day, Dave and I are talking to each other. How should we handle this? How should we handle this?
Right?
How should we handle this? How should we handle this? Yeah. I mean, the number of how should we handle this conversations we have, it just continues to increase, it feels like.
It's so true. And it's funny, when they were younger, we had more like definite conversations of how things go.
Totally.
We need to do this. We need to do this.
Totally.
We just need to now we're like, with our friends, they'll be sharing things. And we used to have really definite. So we're like, oh, that sounds really tough.
Yeah.
Like we don't have any advice.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah, that is tough. So what can parents do to help their kids have sticky faith?
Yeah.
I've just got to ask that question.
Yeah, sure. Well, really the number one way that my parenting has been influenced, and I feel like every day I parent differently and better because of our research, but probably the number one way is, as a parent, I'm always looking for a tip or a trick. Like, what can I do?
Sure.
What's the forward phrase I can say? And we offer that through our Sticky Faith resources. But really what's most important is the parent's relationship with the kid. We did a host of interviews with families and parents who have an amazing relationship with their kids, and their kids are passionate about Jesus. And I'll never forget one dad of 3 young women, teenagers and 2 college students, who said this. He said, my wife and I have realized as long as I have relationship, I have influence. As long as I have relationship, I have influence. And so Dave and I are constantly trying to figure out, how do we get close to our kids' hearts? How do we stay connected with who they are? And we're juggling SAT tests and homework and how late one of our kids can stay out and what is curfew and, technology. I mean, there's a lot of rules, so to speak, and boundaries we're trying to create. But in the midst of all that, what does it look like to really stay close to our kids' hearts? That's become our driving motivation because of our research.
As long as you have relationship, you have influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so powerful. So, while most of your research is based on healthy family relationships, Kara, tell us something you've learned that relates to healthy marriages, because this is the Married People podcast, where we say we want to make marriages real, fun, and simple.
Nice.
So people are, they're going on a run or they're driving to work. We want to give them something that encourages them, but, also gives them some great, great wisdom. So tell us something that you've learned that relates to healthy marriages.
Yeah. One of the things we've seen in young people, and it's certainly, I'll make the connection to families in just a moment and marriages in just a moment, is that young people have a very distorted understanding of Christianity. They tend to think it's a list of rules, a list of do's and don'ts. And they don't realize that what separates Christianity from every other religion is grace. What separates Christianity from every other religion is grace. And so, we're recommending to families, how can your family be a place where God's grace just permeates? And so I think we can extrapolate to marriages. How do we have our marriages be a place where we're quick to ask for forgiveness, where we're quick to forgive, where we really model the grace we've experienced from Jesus, and that we're tunnels through which that grace flows. I think the way that we forgive each other, the way that we're understanding of each other in marriages that are Christian, they should be different than maybe other marriages. And in my mind, that what separates a Christian marriage the most from other marriages is an understanding of God's grace.
Wow, Kara, I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone put it that way, but I cannot agree with you more, because, we work for an organization called Orange.
Yep.
And one of the things Orange tries to do is to help churches partner with parents.
Yep.
So we've been really intentional helping churches to, hey, if we're going to talk about grace on a Sunday morning, small group leaders, we're going to give you a tool to talk with kids, but we're also going to give parents a tool to talk to their kids about grace. Yeah. And I've actually used that example. It's really, really hard for parents to teach their kids about grace when they're not giving their spouse grace.
Right.
And so I think, what are they seeing? What is, it's always caught, not taught. Right?
Totally.
So they're watching this. That's good stuff, Kara. Why do you think it's so important for kids to see this?
One of the other phrases that I remember quite a bit from the interviews we did with parents was a dad, also of 3 young women, high school and college age young women. And it was time for me to interview him, and we had set up the interview, and he was recommended by his youth pastor. And when I called him, he said, "Oh man, I really don't think you should be interviewing me. I'm just really struggling as a dad." And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" He said, "Because I've had to apologize to each of my daughters in the last 48 hours. And I'd done enough interviews by then to see this theme of grace being really prevalent. And so I told this dad, like, that's exactly why we want to talk to you, is the families that tend to thrive are those that are quick to say, I'm sorry to each other. And again, extrapolating for marriage, it's hard. I mean, Dave sees me at my worst in every single category, emotionally, relationally, physically, all that. He sees me at my worst. And in all candor, I see him at his worst too. And so it makes it often, I think, more of a challenge to show grace to each other in our marriage because we see the good, the bad, and the ugly of our spouses. And I think some of the things that drew us to our spouse before we married them end up annoying us once we get married. So
From fascinating to irritating.
Totally. Yes, exactly. And my husband, I'm a very type A plus kind of person, and my husband's much more easygoing, much more laid back, much more flexible. I always know what time it is, like with the 10-minute interval. Like I always know what time it is. Dave never knows what time it is, and I thought, oh, that's so endearing. That's so awesome. And once we get married, it's like, just wish he would know what time it was every once in a while. Just wish he would be a little less late sometimes. So, and I knew all that about him before I married him. And it's exactly what I need. It was what I need. It is what I need. But still, it could be a little challenging when we see some of those differences in our in personalities or values or priorities between spouses.
Well, I've wondered before, Kara, that, does God do this? Because there's some couples, that are very similar. Robert, who's our producer here today, he and his wife are similar in lots of ways, but a lot of us have married our opposite. Yeah. I am also one of those. Yeah. I've married a woman who has a master's of accounting degree, and then I'm this, whatever this is. And it is very different and probably confusing for our children. Yeah. But it is.
Do you find that they take after one of you then? Like, are your kids gravitating towards your personalities?
Well, here's what I'd love to know from you. Before we had kids, I thought it was going to be 90% nurture and 10% nature. Now that they're actually on this planet, I wonder if this is not the reverse, that they were really born a way, that God created them a way. Like my mom passed away when I was 10, but my daughter is so much like her in every sense of the word. And so I feel like, as a parent, there's this pressure to, if something's going wrong, it's all your fault. But sometimes that's who they are. But we've definitely watched that our kids have our personality. My daughter is me, and our boys are more like their mom. They're more linear than me.
Yeah. Well, the nature-nurture combination, or shall I say controversy, is an interesting one. I don't know enough about the data to give a precise answer. I don't know that anybody knows enough about the data. But I will say this, kind of like you said, I remember studying it as an undergraduate in college, and, I thought it was so much nurture, and definitely the vast majority nurture, and nature only being part of it. But now that I have kids, let's just say that I've seen lots more of how God's wired them, these personalities, these skills, just who they are and what they emanate. I mean, literally since about the second month, we could see the difference with each of our kids. And so it's a complicated interplay of nature and nurture, but now that I actually am a parent, I see a whole lot more nature than I realized before I was a parent.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I talked with Sam and Tony Collier, and Tony has a little girl. When they got married, she had a little girl, and he says she's a mini-me of Tony. And he says, I can see how her emotions, I can see what she gets excited about, her energy level. And he said, I feel like I better know how to, co-parent her because I understand mom.
Right.
And so I think you start watching these dynamics, and sometimes the things that are similar with my kids, that helps me connect with them, but also sometimes those similarities, probably the things I have not integrated or I don't love about myself, and it tends to frustrate me more. But It is different to say, oh, you can watch, your mom kind of does that too. Your mom does that to me already. Don't you do that to me? Yeah. But you kind of watch those dynamics. It's fun. Yeah. Fun is the word.
Yeah, fun is, I'm going to put that in air quotes. It's really fun, which again, it just goes back to how important it is to show each other grace. whether it's with our kids or, especially in the context of this podcast, with our spouses. How can we try to outdo each other in showing each other grace? Like if that was a goal for a marriage, think about how different my marriage, any marriage would be if we were trying to outdo each other in showing each other grace.
Wow. That is a powerful, powerful concept, because I'm pretty sure our culture is, we've kind of been taught, to ask the question, is this marriage working for me?
Yeah.
And, from cohabitation, you bring that mindset, and some of it's just culture saying, it's about you. It's about communicating what you need.
Yep.
And there's truth to some of that. But to say, what if we tried to outdo each other by giving each other grace?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an amazing thing?
Yeah, and think about what that would say to our culture overall. Again, I think a marriage centered in Jesus should somehow be different.
Right.
And wouldn't it be great if the church and if families and if marriages were known as beacons of God's grace? I would just love for Christian marriages to be famous for being permeated with grace.
Gosh, okay. If we were on a video or vlog right now, I'd be jumping up and down with you, because I feel like, one of the...
You are kind of jumping up and down now, Ted. I will say that. You're bouncing in your chair.
Something just to think about that, to say that if the church can get marriage right, then we can reach millennials who want to have great marriages.
Yep.
And we can reach, what would happen if our marriages looked better than anyone else's, and not in an arrogant way, just in a way of grace, in
Yep.
a way of they talk well about each other,
Yep.
they cheer each other on,
Yep.
they love each other, they're supportive. The people in the cul-de-sac or people at the little leagues games
Yep.
going, what do they have? Because I think people want great marriages. I don't
Yep.
think people have ill intent.
Yep.
And as followers of Christ, wow, that could be, if we could get that right, Kara, we would.
Game changer.
Game changer. So what do you think the first step in showing each other grace in our marriage? What would you say?
Well, I think for Dave and I, it starts with understanding each other's best times to talk about hard subjects. So I am an early morning riser, and I'm a mess after about 9 p.m. I'm at a meeting tonight until 10:30. I've
With
gotta
Reggie Joyner.
Yeah, exactly.
God
And
bless
Doug
your soul.
Fields. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I got to
your
get a
heart.
lot of caffeine in me to make it through this 10:30. I actually told Doug, I'd rather meet at 5 a.m. than meet until 10:30, like truly. But everybody else is a later night person, so I try to adjust. But I'm a mess after 9 p.m. And similarly, Dave's not so great until about 7 a.m. And so we've realized that if there's something going on between us, if we haven't worked it out by about 9 or 9:30 p.m., we're probably not going to work it out that night. Like it's only going to get worse.
Right.
And I try not to barrage Dave with all my great ideas about life and marriage before 7 a.m. I let him have his coffee, take a shower, kind of wake up to the day. So I think it starts with understanding, if we're going to show each other grace, we're going to have hard conversations. And what's the best time for your spouse to have that hard conversation? So
That's great. One of the things that somebody told us before we got married said, we don't have any hard conversations before 9 a.m. and after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And the times we have broken that rule, and we've been married 22 years, Kara, I can't tell you, it almost has always failed us.
Yeah, totally. It gets worse. Like my emotions and my ability to think clearly and own what I've done wrong, they just plummet after about 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So
I have no more grace after 9. Yeah.
So Dave very wisely says when we get close to 9 p.m., he's like, Kara, let's talk about this tomorrow. And that's exactly what we need to say to each other, because we've got to have the best windows, set ourselves up for success by having a good time window to talk about it.
So why do you think hard conversations lead to grace? Can you talk us through that just a little bit? Like when you think about you guys processing that, and we're going to do it at a good time. Tell me a little bit, what does that look like?
Yep. We're learning. And in 19 years of marriage, we're still learning. But we try to say, I was wrong and you were right, and I'm sorry. Or some facsimile of that. Like just you're right and I'm sorry. And we got that idea from a colleague of mine at Fuller, where he and his wife, they just have a phrase and they say it so much that the kids come to know it, and it just kind of becomes a family mantra. And so it's so easy in marriage to want to defend yourself and defend your ideas and defend your behavior and point fingers at the other person, but instead to just be as quick as we possibly can to own what we've done wrong and say, I totally blew it. I was selfish. I wasn't thinking about you. I misunderstood, whatever it is. And you were right. And I'm really sorry. Will you forgive me? So,
Wow. And that's one of the things we talk about, that marriage may not be easy to live out, but I feel like the way God calls us to love each other is easy to understand. It's not always easy to do, but it's like this. Nancy and I, we're working through this exercise that we're about to teach on conflict.
Nice.
And one of the things that I just hit, I said, what if we treated each other like God treats us? That, man, they keep doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
They've got bad habits. They do things that kind of drive me crazy. He's always leaving his 14 pairs of shoes in the family room.
Yeah.
And I watch couples camp out on that stuff.
Right.
And you know what? If he's frustrated that she's leaving 14 pairs of shoes, he's probably right. She shouldn't be leaving 14 pairs of shoes. But at the same time, you're going, who trumps, that or her? And so I think it's these things of just making it more simple to go, what if we had so much grace with each other?
Yep.
What if we were quick to forgive? That's powerful.
and that means that, if you're the one leaving the shoes, you try to be more mindful about it. And if you're the one who doesn't like the shoes there, sometimes you just pick up the shoes and put them away without saying anything about it.
Yes.
It's an ongoing issue in our house is that my husband sometimes forgets to set our alarm. And, about a third of the time I wake up, and again, I'm up before him and I see, the alarm wasn't set. And if I nagged him on that every single time, then I think it would really erode at our marriage. And so instead, I tell him about it about 40% of the time. Hey, just so you know, the alarm wasn't on last night. And that's my little way of showing him grace with something that I think is kind of important and does kind of bother me, but it's not worth injuring our relationship over.
Is it worth, is this worth bringing up? We've talked about, when we were first married, pre-kids, we had a lot of energy to get upset about silly things.
Yeah.
We had a lot of space.
Right.
Now it's like things that happen going, I'm too tired to talk about that right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that a thing.
Yeah.
I'll just arm it myself.
Right, I'll just set the alarm myself. I'll put away the shoes myself. And if it starts to bother us, then I think we do need to talk about it, because we don't want to suppress those feelings of resentment, because I think then they can blow up or be channeled in unhealthy ways. But if it is something relatively small and we just decide, I'm going to show grace to my spouse, just like they are showing me grace tons of times that I might not even be aware of when I do things, believe it or not, Dave's not the only one in our marriage who does things that are annoying to the spouse. There are things that I do that are annoying to him. And sometimes he will remind me that we've talked about it and can I work on it? But other times he just tolerates it and shows me grace.
That's so good. That's just so powerful. Kara, we've already brought this up, but sometimes we don't want to initiate apologizing, to our spouse. What do we do then? We go, but I'm right.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
I'm right to have acted this way or to have felt this way.
Yeah. This becomes most real to me when Dave and I have been in a conflict, and probably both of us need to apologize to each other. I find in conflict, there's almost always something that I can own, whether the conflict's with my kid or whether it's with a colleague, whatever. I mean, even if it's only 10%, I use the wrong tone of voice, whatever it might be. And so as I think about conflicts that Dave and I have had and will continue to have, I know I'm a part in it. And sometimes, a lot of times, I will feel like, oh gosh, I'm usually the one who apologizes first. I'm going to wait for him to apologize. And then I stop and I go, what kind of a childish perspective is that to take? Like, what battle am I trying to win? Like that I want him to apologize first sometimes. And a lot of times he does. But I think that's just my own sin and my own desire to somehow show him or whatever it might be. And when I see those elements of sin in myself, I mean, that's where I need to grow and continue to be someone who does apologize to Dave. Even if I apologize to Dave first, more than he apologizes to me first, it's just not worth it to wait. There's nothing that we gain by waiting. And so a lot of times, actually, if we've had something go a little bit awry in the morning, and as you pointed out, in the midst of busy family life, sometimes we can't always work it out, and we both have full-time jobs and kids who have to get to school, and so we'll get in the car, and there's still a little bit of tension. There's that residue. And when we have that residue, for both of us, it kind of creates this gray cloud. Like neither one of us are at our best when something's a little askew with the two of us. And so typically, once we take kids to school, once we get to our various jobs, we'll just pick up the phone and try to talk. And often it is me who calls first. And in those moments when I feel like, I'm going to wait for Dave to call me, again, that's my sin. That's my desire to somehow have power or whatever it might be. And so I'm trying to be aware of that. And when I sense that, still pick up that phone and still call Dave and say, hey, let's talk about what happened. I think I blew it by the tone of voice that I used with you. Tone of voice is a big deal for me. So if you were to read a transcript of what I said, the words are probably okay. But tone of voice, both as a parent and a spouse, that is really my bugaboo. That's where I struggle, and that's my area of sin, to be honest. So
that brings up a great point, is knowing, what do I bring to the table? You said the words were probably okay.
Yeah.
It's probably tone. Yeah. And I've really learned that the hard way with my senior.
Yeah.
And I kept feeling like, boy, he's really getting frustrated with me really, really quickly. And he says to me one day, he goes, Dad, I feel like you're cocky. And I thought, and it broke my heart, because I thought, if there's one thing I feel not with my son, is that I need to be cocky with him.
Right.
But that's the way he was receiving it.
Totally.
So regardless of what my heart was, what he was seeing was cocky. And what's scary for me about that, Kara, is just to go, how could I have been so unaware of that? But don't you think, do you find that that's, as parents and as, spouses, that we can be unaware of our tone?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Ted, because communication research on a whole is fairly unanimous that it's not about what we think we're communicating, it's what people are receiving from our communication. So whether it's parent-child, friend-to-friend, boss-employee, whatever relationship it is, we might think we're communicating something, and they're picking up something totally different. And their reality, their perception is actually more important than our perception of what we think we're communicating. And so, I think to say to your spouse, every once in a while, we just kind of have a touch base time. Like, how do you feel about what I'm communicating, how I'm communicating, and let them mirror back to you what they're seeing. Because a lot of times we are not aware of cockiness or wimpiness or whatever it might be that's hindering a relationship.
Wow. So maybe that's a great question.
Yeah.
We could go back and ask our spouse to say, when do you feel like that I'm least effective getting to your heart or understanding? What am I doing? What am I putting out there that maybe they don't know? Because I feel like couples don't talk about important things until they're angry.
Yeah.
They're all caught up in it, and now we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But when you have couples by themselves and you can ask a question and they're in this calm, cool, neutral moment, all of a sudden they can talk about things.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of people walking and going, hey, I want to ask you important question.
Totally.
Like, what am I doing? And just be ready to hear it, though, right?
And that reminds me, Dave and I, we regularly, maybe every 6-9 months, one of us will ask the other one, if you could change anything about me and how I'm acting these days, what would you change?
Wow, that's a brave question. That's a great one.
Yeah,
right?
It is a really good question because I need Dave. Dave sees me more clearly than I see myself much of the time. And so I need him to mirror back to me as a mom, as a friend, as a spouse, et cetera, what he's seen in me that I might not be aware of, but that I would be appalled that people are perhaps perceiving in me, or that I'm actually becoming that. And so I need him to kind of throw a flag on the play and show me what's going on. So we ask that question of each other pretty regularly.
That's like college level questions, listeners, right there. Beware as you enter into those waters.
Yeah, we didn't ask it in our first year or two of marriage. That is true. It took a while.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What if you know that your spouse really owes you an apology, but they won't do it, even when you own your 5-10%?
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
Oh, man, that's a hard place. That's one of those tough questions where you just nod and say, wow, that's a tough one. So I'm doing that to you, Ted. But actually, I think I can offer a bit of a suggestion. And it has to do with timing. And I've learned this in my marriage that, in the heat of the moment is not usually the best time for us to debrief the conversation we just had. Like,
exactly.
We're kind of in conflict. We're in conflict, and we somewhat work it out, and then now let's process it. No. I think to wait until you've cooled down and your spouse has cooled down. It might take an hour or two. It might take a day or two. It could maybe even take longer. And to have the conversation and say, hey, I did feel like I apologized to you, and or I was thinking that you had done things that were hurtful to me, and it would help me a lot if you would apologize for that. I have said that to Dave. It would help me if you would apologize. And at least in the case of our marriage, usually he's ready to apologize right then. Sometimes he still needs to think about it a little bit so that he can genuinely and meaningfully apologize to me. So I think it's, again, knowing the right timing and being honest with what you still feel is a little bit missing in your relationship.
Like take a break.
Yeah.
Think about the question. I like that. It would really help me to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very positive. It's like a great way to talk about that. I love this interview because, I'm a conversationalist guy. I like to say, and that's good and that's bad because I can take us all over the place. But I feel like with this, it's been so laser focused on grace and what that not only does for marriage, but what this does for our kids. Because, and I don't know if this is true, but it feels like to me that, do you want your kids to have your marriage? Because in many ways they will, because that's what they've seen and that's all they know. We were just talking to a couple earlier today on another episode, and they were just talking about that the two of them came from 12 different marriages.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
And they said, we didn't know what we just, that was our normal. Yeah. And then when things got tough, then we left. But I think this is not only important for our own relationship. I think it's what we're given to our kids. And a lot of people that are listening do have kids.
I am familiar with some research actually done by one of my colleagues at Fuller looking at the effect of marital conflict on kids. And a lot of times we might think that, the best thing for a kid is to completely shelter them from conflict in the marriage. That's actually not true. That's the second best thing. So, the worst thing is to have a ton of conflict in front of your kids. But the best thing is actually to have a little bit of conflict and to have your kids see you work through it. So, and that's inevitable. Like when your family's in the car together and conflict comes up,
right.
Your kids are aware of tension between you and your spouse, et cetera. And so, that's not a terrible thing for kids to see every once in a while. But what's really important is that they not only see any little bit of conflict, but that they see the parents be reconciled. And so everything we've talked about showing each other grace, can we also do that when our 12-year-old, our 2-year-old, or our 22-year-old is in the back seat and aware of what's going on? And according to research that, again, this colleague of mine has done at Fuller, it's really beautiful when we can, in front of our kids, work through a little bit of conflict and show each other grace.
Did they see that?
Yeah.
Did they see how to do that? Because they're going to have conflict, right?
Absolutely.
So, Kara, we want to give people one thing each time, one simple thing each week until they come back to the next episode.
Yeah.
What would you say, here's one simple thing that you can do this week with your spouse in regards to grace?
My recommendation is that sometime this week when the time is right, okay? So not when you're busy, not when you're frantic, not when there's maybe already tension, but when the time is right, the two of you are relaxed, to just have a conversation about how you work through conflict. What's good about it? And affirm each other. I really appreciate it when you do this, and hopefully we can affirm a number of things that our spouse does that's good. And then maybe say to each other, if we could change one thing about how we handle conflict, what would it be? Or if we could change one thing about how each other handles conflict. Again, that's a more brave question.
Right.
Requires more bravery and courage, but to be able to identify, like, here's a lot of things we're doing well, but here's one thing we could work through a little bit better. I think we'd be able to show each other grace even more effectively.
Tell me how that works in your marriage. Like if you were to look at Dave and say, do you do this well with conflict, what would you say?
What I would say to him that
Correct.
He does well in conflict, he's a great listener, okay? He is fantastic at not overreacting. I'm quick to overreact. He is great at not holding what I did last week against me in addition to what I just did, say, yesterday.
So that grace.
That's grace, yeah. I mean, he's quick to forgive. So he does a really good job at focusing on the problem at hand and not the last 12 problems that we've probably to some degree worked through or maybe totally worked through. He just stays focused on the problem at hand, and I really appreciate that about him.
That's great. What would you say if he were sitting here? What do you think he would say back to you?
I think he would say I am pretty quick to apologize. I think he would say that I initiate an I'm sorry before he does. I think he would say that I have good insights about our family and our marriage, so I'm just a little bit more aware of dynamics.
Sure, that's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of what I've studied in my job, and I just have kind of a fine-tuned radar for what's going on with our kids and what's going on in our marriage, and so I can bring that up. I mean, even in all candor last night, we just weren't totally jiving. My husband's son climbed Mount Whitney this past weekend. Yes.
That's amazing.
Totally amazing. 17 miles. I mean, massive adventure. So fantastic. And my very cheerful, very stable husband was just a little bit grumpy last night. And so we just had a couple interactions that, unlike him, was a little bit gruff. And so as we're lying in bed last night, I said, doesn't feel like we're really connecting. And he actually apologized. He said, Kara, I'm so sorry. I'm just so sore. And I'm just so tired. It's affecting everything. So, I'm the one who brought that up. That feels like we're just not jiving. And then, so I think he appreciates that I'm sensitive to those dynamics and we'll bring them up.
That's great. You're going to keep it from festering to something worse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He would be more likely to sweep something under the rug and hope it all works out. And I'm more likely to say, no, I think we need to talk about that.
That's great. And we were talking before this interview, and I'll just leave people with this, is, Kara, I love the way you talk about Dave. I love
thank you.
And you said, yeah, I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan. I mean, I got to say, he's the most Christ-like man that I know. And it's a blessing to be able to say that about my husband. So we do really cheer for each other privately and publicly.
So great. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for modeling that. And it's like you said earlier, our relationships, is, if you're a believer, we should be reflecting something so great that it draws people to not only, our church, but Christ.
Yeah.
So thanks for
That's
modeling
the
that.
prayer and the hope. Thank you. Thanks for a good conversation, Ted.
Well, Ted, that was a really great conversation between you and Kara. And I think Kara did such a great job of unpacking kind of what's at stake when we don't offer grace. I know we've been talking a lot about like apologizing and, with your spouse, but behind all that is the whole grace idea. And she said something that really stuck out to me. And it's just like, it was like, ooh, yeah, that's so true. She said, we have residue when we don't apologize. Or, and I think another way I kind of phrase it in my head, we have residue when we don't offer grace. I can think back, Terry and I, when we've had conflicts and we have held back grace or held back apologies, or I've held that back from her, like that does leave something. It leaves that residue. There's such a powerful, visual there that we carry into the next day or weeks or months or into the next conflict.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I feel like when you talk about grace in a marriage, there is like a piece of it that has to do with apologizing and getting in big fights and arguments and how you deal with it. But for me, like when I think about grace in my marriage, I think what I think of is like, I let Hudson be who he is and not try to like push a bunch of little things on him that I think he should or should not do or be.
Wow, that's great.
Like for me, I think a lot of it, maybe it's that he like leaves his stuff all over the house. And it's like, for me, I can show him grace by like literally just like not making it as big of a deal as I really think it is, like just letting him kind of be his person. And Hudson's thing, it's so funny because he like forgets everything. He just forgets. And like, he's really clumsy. Like his parents gave him these really nice wine glasses for Christmas. On the way to the car, he dropped them. And it's like those things where like, what I really want to do is be like,
You had
really?
one job. You had
one job. Really?
Full circle.
And like in those moments, you just have to be like, you know what? This is kind of just like a part of who you are. And I'm going to love it, even though I probably wouldn't have like written you as a character this way as my spouse.
Of all the interviews and all the things we've talked around this table after, and I think that is one of the greatest things I've ever heard you say. Is my grace is letting them be who he is, and gosh, don't we want to be treated like that ourselves? Just go, I'm just feel like I'm safe. I feel like that she loves who I am. That is so. We do a whole episode on that,
and not to get us off track too much, but it just even reminds me of what you've said before, Ted, in a previous episode, that you have to almost choose to be curious or be interested in who God has made that person to be. And instead of getting frustrated and not offering grace, be curious and offer grace and be like, isn't that fascinating the way she is or he is the way he is? And I think it kind of meshes well with that idea too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love what she said at the beginning where she's like, Christianity is really supposed to be, like our beacon should be grace. And in our marriages, it should be grace. And it's like, how does that look? Like, how do we as Christians respond to people in general? And it's like, it's acceptance, like regardless of where they are in their life journey, like our job is to accept them and show them love. And how does that translate into like this really intimate relationship with one person at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's right, Afton. Thinking about through what Kara's saying about, hey, Christian marriages they should look different. And the main way they should look different is that grace. And I just think we've spent a lot of time, at baseball games, at soccer games, at lacrosse with our kids across all these years. And where I see this happening and not happening is when couples are connecting at the soccer field or reconnecting at the end of the day. And I'm watching how they greet each other and how they treat each other, and they're frustrated and they're tired. And there's couples that take it out on each other, and there's couples that don't. And there's couples that greet each other like, "Oh, I'm glad to see you." And I think we should have marriages that people want to have. And I think it is, you do give grace. Oh, you drop the wine glasses, whatever you go. And Nancy Lowe is so full of grace. I mean, honestly, if I threw a weight through the wall right now today and I went, "Oh, I made a hole in the wall," she'd be like, "Oh." And then she's on to the next thing.
But isn't that that's the best feeling when you've done something wrong and I get home and I'm like, he could make a really big deal out of this. Like, this is going to be a thing tonight. And then it's just like, oh, well. All right. You're like, phew, oh my goodness. Okay. I guess that's fine.
That's great. That's great.
Well, before we do wrap up today, Kara gave us a one simple thing. And like you always say, Ted, we really want these conversations to boil down to one practical, simple thing that we can do this week. And she challenged us that when the time is right, have a conversation about how you handle conflict with your spouse. And then ask if we could change one thing about how we handle conflict, what would it be? And I think this is such a great challenge because when I heard that, I'm like, the only time Terry and I really talk about conflict is when we're having conflict or like right after we've had a conflict. Like, wow, that was not great. And that was, we should probably try and do better next time. And then we just don't do anything until the next time we have a conflict. So having a conversation about conflict when you're not in one,
right.
It's just, it can't be a bad thing, right?
Well, and couples can really, I've watched, I've been doing this long enough time to go, couples can talk about deeper things when they're calm. They really, really can. They're going to, you might amaze yourself, you that are listening, that you really can do this and have a conversation about this. You can do this.
Kind of a downer, though.
It's kind of a downer.
It's like, let's go on date night and talk about how we
it doesn't have to
talk about fights.
It could be like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a 3-hour conversation, leading that takes up the whole evening. But it is just like the intentionality of, all right, pick a time. Let's have a conversation about how we handle conflict this week. And that's a great, simple way to learn how to practice grace, offering grace with your spouse. So thank you guys for joining us this week for the Married People Podcast. We hope that today's episode helps you realize that marriage is a little easier than you think. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts, because your review will help us make this podcast better and get these conversations in front of more people who need to hear them. And finally, for more great resources to make your marriage better, check out Ted's book, Your Best Us. You can find it on Amazon. And visit our website, marriedpeople.org, for more great resources and to find the show notes for this episode. Then join us for next week's episode, where we'll be talking to Carrie Newhoff about the question, can I have a great marriage and a great career? Until next time, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
And thank you for listening.